evening, everyone, and welcome to another round of sound. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Bob Pompeani. Thanks for staying up with us tonight. We have a lot to get into. Penguins sign one of their key defensemen. Long-term deal. We'll talk about that. And also, hockey season has officially opened up with training camps. We'll get into that. #1 topic, however, tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be the Steelers as they embark on the playoffs. Coming off a win today, actually a loss, but a win, and they avoid the Ravens, depending on how you look at it. With that game today in Cleveland, they lost 24-22. Here's your panel. As we talk about these topics, we have Rich Walsh, my colleague over in Studio B. We have Will Graves from the Associated Press who joins us tonight. Paul Zeise over at 93.7 The Fan, and of course the Post-Gazette. So, Paul, let's start with you, and I want to get into specifically Mason Rudolph right off the bat because he was the quarterback of choice. I thought he secured his space as the backup moving forward with a pretty good effort considering that he hadn't really played all year. Your thoughts on what Mike Tomlin called a gritty performance?
Well, no, I mean, I would agree. The one thing that you saw from him was as the game went on, he got a little bit better and a little bit better. I mean, some of the things and the mistakes that he made are just sort of a feel and experience. I mean, people are talking about him holding the ball a little too long at times. It's just a matter of being in that pocket and playing enough snaps to really kind of get an idea of, you know, what you need to do. And I thought as the game went on, he got better. Threw for 300-plus yards, 2 touchdowns. Made the one really atrocious mistake, but again, I think that's one that, you know, a little more experience, he probably doesn't make that throw. So, all in all, I mean, I know a lot of people were expecting him to be atrocious. He actually was pretty good in my mind. I mean, I think he's good enough at least to let you feel good about if Ben comes back that you've got a backup for next year.
Arguably his best game, I think. I think it was better than any game that he played last year. This is kind of the Landry Jones type situation, isn't it? You got a pretty good backup, and if you can get him at a good price, he knows the system, seems like a smart kid. People seem to like him. So I was somewhat surprised by watching him today. Like Paul said, that one bad play where he just threw the ball right into the Browns. Other than that, I like the way he played. Think maybe it was his best game as a professional.
I mean, look, he's had an NFL arm from when he was at Oklahoma State. I mean, the guy's had an NFL arm from the day he got in the league. It's everything else that he needs to figure out. And I think if you're the Steelers, he was aggressive. But, yeah, I think he also played like a guy who hasn't been hit for a year. And there was a lot of times in the first half especially, I think he thought the rush had like 10 Mississippi before they were allowed to hit him. And he looked like a guy that took reps with the ones in practice on Wednesdays when he's not allowed to be hit. But to me, you know, let's be honest. I mean, maybe the most important thing for the arc of his career is what happened afterward, where he and Myles Garrett exchanged a very brief, pleasant conversation, saying good game to each other. And I think for both these guys, they want to put this in their rearview mirror. I think it was more important for Mason, just because Myles has had a great year. He's Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee for his team. He has moved on, but for Mason, that chapter needed to be closed, and I think now we can just sort of focus on being a football player going forward.
All right, I want to talk about another guy who played today, Josh Dobbs. We have not seen him. Rich, I'll start with you on this because even though he was 4 for 5 in the passing department, he only had 2 yards passing, but he did rush for 20. He gives you a little change of pace. So my question would be, looking ahead now to next week, would that package, having him in there, be worth him being activated and using a roster spot on a third quarterback on your roster, or would you choose not to do that?
I probably would choose not to do it. I mean, Ben is your guy. You have other weapons, better athletes. I'm not a big gadget play kind of guy. I want to put the best guys out there. I'd rather see Deontay Johnson in a sweep, or maybe you could do, you know, the Wildcat with someone. I'd rather see that. I'd rather see one of your better receivers get a roster spot or another running back than a quarterback that might not even see the field.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you struggle to run the ball, if you struggle to run the ball as much as they've struggled to run the ball all year, I think you overturn every single stone in trying to make that happen. So I'm okay if, you know, Richie's right in the sense that they probably should not do it. But if they did, I wouldn't be like, oh, my God, what are they doing? I mean, I'd be more concerned about depth along the line than having a third quarterback. But you know what? I mean, maybe not. Maybe, you know, roll with what you have. And if you think you saw something there, I mean, why not? Because literally nothing else with the running game is working.
Well, I mean, I think the thing about it is that I don't see why why you wouldn't at least do that, or at least make that a possibility. I mean, even if you just make them active, or you talk about them being active, the Browns have to think about it. And to me, I'm sorry, the offensive line is bad. I mean, let's stop, beating around the bush and trying to be nice because we like all these guys. They've been around forever. They can't play anymore. I mean, Alexander Villanueva. To be honest, if I was the Steelers, I'd be looking at Okorafor at left tackle this whole week and see if you could put Fowler out at right tackle because Alexander Villanueva can't play. They can't block. They can't run block. They can't get a running game going. Why not try something a little different?
Interesting stuff there. That could be one of the decisions. Here's another decision I'll throw at you, and that would be, Will, to you on this one. We saw Matthew Wright hit a couple of 46-yard field goals today, which is something that he was not even offered the opportunity against Washington. But at the same time, his kickoffs often don't get into the end zone. So let's say that Chris Boswell has an iffy week and you're not sure if he's 100% or not. Do you have to make sure you have another kicker in case something happens to his groin in game, Will?
I mean, I don't know. That's a good question, Pop. That's a first world problem. I wouldn't. If Boswell, who has been very good when he's been in the playoffs, he's been very, very good. I mean, he basically won that Bengals game for them, but a few years ago. I would just roll with him, and then tell Jordan Berry to stay loose. I just think that Matthew Wright, I mean, he looked better today, but look, I watched him during warm-ups a week ago, and I mean, he's not Boswell. He's not, and he's not remotely close. And I just think those spots are so precious, you're not going to waste it on a second kicker.
I guess the big question is, would you take an 80% Chris Boswell? I mean, if he's not 100% healthy, what do you do then? That's the big question here. I only think you should dress one kicker. I mean, maybe potentially if we go back to the quarterbacks, maybe you just dress Josh Dobbs and you make Mason Rudolph a scratch because you might not win the game if Ben Roethlisberger isn't playing. So let's go back to the kicker. If Chris Boswell's not healthy, he's got to sit for this one, and you just go with Matthew Wright.
The thing about it is we saw what an 80% Chris Boswell looks like a couple of years ago, and it was one of the big reasons they missed the playoffs because he couldn't make kicks. Kicking is, to me, if you got some problems with your hips or your legs or anything like that, you can't play. It's the stakes are too high. Field goals are too important. If Chris Boswell's healthy, he plays. If not, then you roll with Matthew Wright, and like Will said, see if Jordan Berry can kick off. But you can't play a kicker if he's not 100%.
No, I think it's going to be an interesting decision, and they will certainly have to monitor what Boswell looks like as the week goes on, because if it's not where they want him to be, it's either then you're going to pick one or the other or both, just in case. And if you do that, you impact other roster positions. So it's a tricky game that they have to play looking at this game. But it's going to be the Steelers and the Browns. We will break it down when we come back. That'll be the next topic we get into. The Steelers have won both games. Can they win 3? A lot of times you hear that saying, well, it's tough to beat a team 3 times in 1 year. The Steelers are going to have that opportunity. We talk about it next right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. The #1 Cochran Sports Showdown is brought to you by #1 Cochran, Go One Better, and by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Have a greater hand in your health.